In this video, I'm going to make a truck bed extender. This is a follow-on video. I will post a link to the original video in the description. I've made this from some 18mm thick phenolic mesh-faced plywood. I managed to pick this up cheap from Peter Benton Plywood as they had some offcuts. If you ever need to buy any sheet timber materials, then I highly recommend them, as it's the only place that I'll buy sheet materials from. The offcuts are roughly 4 feet by 2 feet in size and 18mm thick. I bought 6 of these. I've had this idea in my head for months, as there has to be an easier way for me to transport my Lobo scaffolding. It's a real pain to fix the platforms on the roof rack, and they won't fit in the back of the truck. Thanks for all the comments on the previous video. It seems that the number plate needs to be illuminated, although I will never go out in this at night with the extender. But this is easily overcome by using a trailer board. So here is how I made the extender in less than 4 hours. If we look at the back of the truck, it is plastic lined and has 4 cargo fixing points. You might be wondering why I don't just put the stuff in the back of the truck and secure it using ratchet straps with the tailgate down. I could do that, but it tells you in the owner's manual not to drive with the tailgate down. I think that is because it obscures the number plate. Also, it's a real pain getting to the fixing points once the vehicle is loaded, so this load extender makes the job much easier. Also, the load extender also contains a smaller part that would otherwise fall out of the back of the vehicle even if ratchet straps were used. I started by holding up a piece of plywood at each side of the van, then worked out how much of the plywood needs cutting off, so that it will fit under the top back window. I've then marked this onto the sheet and ensured that the extender has a slight fall on it to the rear, so rain will not pool on the top of it. I have purposely made these in an L type of shape so that it is impossible for these pieces to pass the rear back window. You can easily cut these with a circular saw or a jigsaw. I've cut 2 of these pieces which are identical. Now for the floor. I originally wanted to make this wider and was going to use the full 4 feet width of the offcuts, but then I could not make the extender slide as the gap between the wheel arches is not big enough. So I ended up cutting a couple of inches off from each end. Again, I cut 2 identical pieces as I need to join these together. Obviously, if you aren't using offcuts, you can just buy a single piece that is long enough. I've then cut some offcuts of 12mm plywood that I had left over from another job, and I've used those to join the 2 pieces of phenolic mesh-based plywood together. All pieces have been screwed together sufficiently. I've now placed the floor of the extender in the truck and placed the 2 side pieces in position. I was originally going to put a hinged back on this, so I'm fixing a piece of 4x2 timber to the back of it. I have clamped this in position and then fixed it from below using some 4-inch long screws. I'm now going to fix the side pieces in position. I've used a thin block of wood to space the sides from the backstop, which is about 8mm thick. This will ensure we have a small gap. Now I'm fixing these in position using these 90-degree lock hinges, which are often used on furniture, etc. These hinges were bought from eBay and cost approximately £10 for 4. I have put 5 screws in each leaf of the hinge, or as many screws as I could. The screws are a bit long, so I've used a flat disc to sand them flush with the timber. At this point I'm about to cut the back piece, but I've realised that if I move the backstop out, I can slide the back into the gap, and that way I don't need to use hinges. I'm removing the 4-inch screws. I have then placed a piece of plywood against the 2 sides, then clamped the backstop back down and re-secured it using the 4-inch screws. I've now put a piece of plywood on top so that I can now mark the back for cutting. I've then cut this down using the circular saw. I've also cut 2 smaller pieces from offcuts, which are screwed to the back. Then I've cut the top to the correct width and used more offcuts at each side. Again, these are screwed into position. Basically that's the hard work out of the way. Now we just need to fix it to the vehicle. I've done this by using some heavy duty chain that I got from my local ironmongers, which is James Gibson's in Darwen. I also bought the D-shackles from there. I've moved the extender where it needs to be so that it's not extending past the tailgate. I've then climbed in the back of the van with a drill and a pair of bolt cutters. I drill a 6mm hole through the plywood, then lift it up and insert a roofing bolt. I then just use a couple of large washers and a nylock nut to fix the chain to the bolt and tighten everything up. To fix the chain to the cargo points in the vehicle, I have used D-shackles. I can now extend the chain and cut it to the correct length using the bolt cutters. I've then removed the whole thing from the vehicle and I've quickly cleaned it using methylated spirits and a clean rag before spray painting the cut edges. I've used Rust-Oleum spray paint as it is quick drying and will be touch dry in 10 minutes. Firstly, I used a primer, then a black satin top coat. I have then applied some adhesive reflective strip. More was also added the next day. Basically, that's how I made it. The whole thing only took a few hours. Obviously, this design can be improved. You could incorporate locks, etc. This is simply a first attempt at making something in order to move a difficult item much easier and much safer than before. I'm already making changes to it, such as replacing the number plate with a trailer board. Then the number plate will be illuminated. I'd like to thank you for watching the video, and I do hope that you found it useful.